Today the world woke up to a major and highly sensitive development coming out of the Western Hemisphere as the United States military officially confirmed that it carried out a targeted strike on a drug boat loading facility located inside Venezuelan territory, an operation described by U.S. officials as part of an expanded counter-narcotics mission aimed at dismantling transnational drug trafficking networks that pose a direct threat to American national security. According to statements released by senior defense and administration officials, the facility was being actively used by powerful drug cartels to load massive quantities of narcotics onto high-speed boats destined for international waters, from where the drugs would be trafficked towards Central America, Mexico, and ultimately the United States. President Donald Trump addressed the nation shortly after reports surfaced, stating that the strike was precise, limited in scope, and designed to send a strong message that the United States will not tolerate the use of sovereign territories as safe havens for criminal organizations that profit from addiction, violence, and instability. Trump emphasized that this was not an act of war against Venezuela as a nation but a direct action against criminal infrastructure, asserting that American intelligence had confirmed the facility's exclusive use for illegal drug operations. Pentagon officials explained that the operation was conducted using advanced surveillance, satellite intelligence, and real-time maritime tracking, allowing U.S. forces to identify the exact location and timing of the drug-loading activities, ensuring minimal collateral damage and no civilian casualties. This strike marks a significant escalation in Washington's counter-drug strategy in the region, signaling a shift from interception at sea to pre-emptive disruption at the source. For years, U.S. authorities have accused Venezuelan territory of being used by narcotics traffickers due to weak enforcement, alleged corruption, and political instability, claims that the Venezuelan government has consistently denied. Following the strike, Venezuelan officials strongly condemned the action, calling it a violation of sovereignty and international law, and demanded an emergency meeting of regional organizations to discuss what they described as U.S. aggression. However, U.S. officials countered those accusations by stating that international law allows self-defense measures against transnational criminal threats, especially when those threats directly impact the safety and well-being of American citizens. Inside Washington, reactions were sharply divided along political lines, with supporters of the administration praising the move as long overdue and critics warning that such actions could destabilize an already fragile region and provoke unintended consequences. Supporters argue that drug trafficking has fueled crime, overdoses, and social decay across the United States, and that striking at the logistical backbone of cartels is more effective than merely intercepting shipments once they reach international waters territories, even against criminal targets, risk escalating tensions and could set dangerous precedents if other nations adopt similar doctrines. Military analysts note that the operation demonstrates the United States' increasing reliance on precision strikes and intelligence-driven warfare, minimizing boots on the ground while maximizing impact. They also point out that the use of such tactics reflects lessons learned from decades of counter-terrorism operations, now being applied to the fight against organized crime. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies across the United States welcomed the development, stating that disrupting supply chains abroad directly reduces the volume of drugs entering American cities, potentially saving thousands of lives affected by opioid addiction and drug-related violence. According to internal estimates, the destroyed facility was capable of processing and loading several tons of narcotics each month, representing millions of dollars in illegal profits for cartels and criminal syndicates. President Trump framed the strike as part of a broader campaign to restore law and order both domestically and internationally, reiterating his administration's hardline stance against drug traffickers and the government's that the use of such tactics reflects lessons learned from decades of counter-terrorism operations, now being applied to the fight against organized crime. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies across the United States welcomed the development, stating that disrupting supply chains abroad directly reduces the volume of drugs entering American cities, potentially saving thousands of lives affected by opioid addiction and drug-related violence. According to internal estimates, the destroyed facility was capable of processing and loading several tons of narcotics each month, representing millions of dollars in illegal profits for cartels and criminal syndicates. President Trump framed the strike as part of a broader campaign to restore law and order both domestically and internationally, reiterating his administration's hardline stance against drug traffickers and the governments that, in his words, look the other way. He warned that the United States would continue to take decisive action wherever credible intelligence identifies threats to American security, regardless of political pressure or diplomatic backlash. International reaction has been mixed, with some regional allies quietly expressing support for the operation, citing their own struggles with drug trafficking and organized crime, while others urge restraint and renewed diplomatic engagement to address the root causes of the drug trade, including poverty, corruption, and demand in consumer countries. As the situation continues to unfold, analysts expect increased surveillance activity in the Caribbean and along major trafficking routes, along with heightened diplomatic exchanges between Washington, Caracas, and regional partners. What remains clear is that this strike has reignited debate over the limits of military power in combating non-state criminal actors and has once again placed U.S. foreign policy in Latin America under intense global scrutiny. Whether this action will significantly disrupt drug trafficking networks or trigger a new cycle of tension and retaliation remains to be seen, but for now, the message from Washington is unmistakable. The United States is willing to act decisively, beyond its borders, to confront what it views as direct threats to its national security and public health. As more details continue to emerge, senior U.S. military officials revealed that the strike on the Venezuelan drug boat loading facility was the result of months of coordinated intelligence gathering involving multiple agencies, including the Pentagon, the Drug Enforcement Administration, U.S. Southern Command, and allied regional intelligence services. Sources familiar with the operation say the facility had been under surveillance for a long time and was identified as a critical logistical hub connecting South American cocaine producers with maritime smuggling routes feeding the North American drug market. Officials explained that the decision to strike was taken only after confirming repeated high-volume trafficking activity, making the target a strategic choke point rather than a symbolic action. The U.S. administration stressed that the operation was designed to cripple cartel operations without escalating into a broader military confrontation, highlighting the use of precision, guided munitions and real-time intelligence confirmation moments before impact. According to defense analysts, this type of operation reflects a broader evolution in U.S. counter-narcotics strategy, one that treats drug trafficking organizations as national security threats rather than purely criminal enterprises. The logic behind this approach, officials argue, is that cartels now possess financial resources, weapons, and networks comparable to insurgent groups, enabling them to destabilize entire regions and corrupt state institutions. Inside Venezuela, local reports indicate heightened security alerts along coastal regions, with military patrols increased and airspace monitoring intensified following the strike. The Venezuelan government accused the United States of using the drug war as a pretext to interfere in domestic affairs, while reiterating claims that it actively combats drug trafficking within its borders. However, U.S. officials countered by pointing to international drug seizure data, which they say shows a consistent pattern of narcotics transiting through Venezuelan-controlled corridors. Meanwhile, regional governments in Latin America are watching the situation closely, aware that the precedent set by this strike could reshape how powerful nations respond to transnational crime. Some leaders privately acknowledge that drug trafficking has overwhelmed local law enforcement capabilities, while others fear that unilateral military actions could undermine sovereignty and regional stability. In Washington, the operation has already become a focal point in domestic political debate, with supporters praising President Trump for decisive leadership and critics questioning the long-term consequences of militarizing the drug war. Congressional discussions are expected in the coming days regarding oversight, legal justification, and future rules of engagement for similar operations. Push criminal groups deeper into civilian areas, increasing risks for local populations. As global media attention intensifies, the strike has reopened long-standing questions about the balance between security and diplomacy, enforcement and development, power and restraint. For now, the Trump administration remains firm, insisting that protecting American lives from the deadly impact of illegal drugs justifies aggressive action when intelligence confirms an imminent threat. With surveillance operations ongoing and diplomatic exchanges heating up, the coming weeks will reveal whether this strike marks a turning point in the U.S. fight against international drug trafficking, or becomes another flashpoint in an already volatile geopolitical landscape.